Hey everyone, Jakinto here. Today I'll be going over everything to do with Marrowrend and Bone Shield. I'll be covering the basics of Marrowrend and Bone Shield, its synergies with talents, abilities, and legendary powers, common misuses when it comes to the two spells, and how you can use Marrowrend and Bone Shield optimally in your Blood Death Knight play. Starting off by looking at Marrowrend, it's an ability that causes moderate amounts of single target damage and costs 2 runes to use. Casting Marrowrend also generates 3 Bone Shield stacks for yourself, and this is really the only reason you want to use Marrowrend, for these Bone Shield stacks. Now what is Bone Shield? It's a buff that lasts for 30 seconds and gives you 10% haste and a certain amount of armor. The amount of armor you get is 70% of your overall strength. So for me, I get 976 armor from Bone Shield stacks, and that's 70% of my total strength. The maximum amount of Bone Shield stacks you can have at any given time is 10. As a Blood Death Knight, Bone Shield really acts as the first source of mitigation. You always want to keep these Bone Shield stacks up. Without Bone Shield, you're very squishy. Having this 10% haste really helps with the cooldown time of your runes, and having this extra armor translates to about 14 to 15% physical damage reduction to a target at the same level as you. So as you can see, there's a lot of benefits for having Bone Shield up. Next, we're going to look at abilities, talents, and legendary powers that synergize well with Bone Shield and Marrowrend. The first synergy we have is with Dancing Rune Weapon. While Dancing Rune Weapon is active, your Marrowrend now generates 6 Bone Shield stacks instead of 3. This will really save you a lot of runes, as if you didn't have Dancing Rune Weapon activated, you'd have to use 6 runes in order to get 9 stacks of Bone Shield. In this way, you only need to use 4 runes in order to cap out on your Bone Shield stacks. You should always use Dancing Rune Weapon right on pull, especially if you're going into the pull without any Bone Shield stacks. It's worth using it even if you're not tanking, just to build those Bone Shield stacks up. Having these high Bone Shield stacks early on will put you in a great position to start generating runic power and not have to worry about those stacks for a little bit. The next synergy we have is with Ossuary. While you have at least 5 stacks of your Bone Shield, the cost of your Death Strike is reduced by 5 runic power. Your maximum runic power is also increased by 10. This is a passive trait that you always have, and it really makes it important that you stay at or above those 5 stacks of Bone Shield at all times. Having that reduced Death Strike cost means you can use Death Strike more often and sooner. This is very important for dealing more damage and more self-healing. The 10 maximum runic power is great as well for runic power pooling when you don't necessarily need to use your Death Strikes. So because of Ossuary, make sure you're always at or above 5 stacks of Bone Shield. It's also worth noting that if you're a Blood Death Knight in the Necrolord Covenant, there is Bone Shield synergy with Abomination Limb. Abomination Limb will generate 3 Bone Shield stacks instantly and 3 Bone Shield stacks every 6 seconds. This means it'll generate 9 Bone Shield stacks in total over its 12-second duration. Since Abomination Limb doesn't cost any runes, this is a very effective way to build up your Bone Shield stacks. This spell should be used before you use Dancing Rune Weapon. You should go into the pull using Abomination Limb, which gets you 3 stacks of Bone Shield, then Dancing Rune Weapon followed by a Marrowrend, and that gets you 9 stacks of Bone Shield very quickly. It also saves you from having to worry about refreshing those stacks for the duration of Abomination Limb, since it does give you stacks every 6 seconds. Now we're going to look at talents which have synergy with Marrowrend and Bone Shield, starting with Tombstone. Tombstone is on the first row of talents. It allows you to consume 5 Bone Shield stacks to gain runic power and an absorb shield around you. You gain 6 runic power per stack consumed, and 6% of your maximum health as a shield for each stack consumed as well. So if you consume the full 5 stacks, you gain 30 runic power and 30% of your maximum health as an absorb shield. This lasts for 8 seconds and it has a 1-minute cooldown. This talent may sound enticing at first, but we really don't want Bone Shield stacks to be consumed. There's very few times where we can actually spare 5 Bone Shield stacks, as it'll often put us below 5 stacks of Bone Shield in total, which will deactivate Ossuary. Gaining those Bone Shield stacks back can also be difficult. If we have Dancing Rune Weapon, we only need to consume 2 runes in order to gain those stacks back. However, if we don't have Dancing Rune Weapon active, we need to consume 4 runes in total. These runes could be used for Heart Strikes, which would generate more runic power, which leads to more Death Strikes. So because of this, even though you are generating a decent amount of runic power and gaining that Absorb Shield, in my opinion, it's not worth going, as you will gain more runic power from using the runes on Heart Strikes. The next talent synergy we have is with Foul Bulwark, which is on the 3rd row of talents. This is a passive talent that increases your maximum health by 1% per stack of Bone Shield. Pretty simple talent, just gives you that maximum health, which is always nice to have. For this talent, you do want to make sure you're setting as high stacks of Bone Shield as possible, so you're gaining that maximum amount of maximum health. This talent can be good if you really need that maximum health. If you find yourself getting one-shot a lot, or struggling to keep yourself up, and you just need a few more seconds to heal yourself, it could be worth using Foul Bulwark to give you that extra time. However, in most cases, I do believe this talent falls behind. It's not optimal to sit at 10 stacks of Bone Shield at all times. There are times where you want your Bone Shield stacks to dip lower. This means that you're not going to be getting 10% maximum health all of the time. In addition, other talents on this row give you some kind of resource back, whether it's rune or runic power. Foul Bulwark doesn't give you any resources back, it simply increases your maximum health. So really only take it if you need that max health buffer to give you a bit more time to use a Death Strike, or to survive that one shot that you're not able to survive. The final talent synergy I'll be going over is with Blood Tap. Blood Tap is on the third row of talents as well, and it lets you consume a charge in order to regain a rune. You start with 2 charges and it has a 1-minute recharge time. However, the recharge time is reduced by 2 seconds every time a Bone Shield stack is consumed. Depending on the fight that you're in, you can really reduce the recharge time of your Blood Tap charges. In Mythic Plus, you'll likely be losing more Bone Shield stacks than in Raid, so the recharge time of Blood Tap will be reduced quite a bit. However, it's still a strong talent in Raid as well, as you do have that rune on demand when you want it. I personally really like this talent a lot, it's pretty solid. Moving on to our legendary powers, Crimson Rune Weapon does have synergy with our Bone Shield stacks. When a Bone Shield stack is consumed, it reduces the cooldown time of your Dancing Rune Weapon by 3 seconds. Since Dancing Rune Weapon only has a 2-minute cooldown time, this can really allow you to gain more usages of your Dancing Rune Weapon. Just like Blood Tap, it does depend on the fight that you're on. In a Mythic Plus scenario, this will be more useful than in raids. Although I still believe this legendary falls behind, as it doesn't have the damage output and mitigation that other legendaries have, it's still a good synergy with Bone Shield. This legendary also has good synergy with Tombstone, as you're consuming 5 Bone Shield stacks with that talent every 1 minute. So if you want to try some kind of off build, you can definitely combine Crimson Rune Weapon with Tombstone and see how that works out for you. The final synergy we're going to talk about with Bone Shield and Marrowrend is with our primary stat, which is Strength. As I mentioned before, the armor that Bone Shield gives you is 70% of your current strength rating. So anything that buffs your strength is also going to give you more armor from your Bone Shield stacks. This includes flasks, augment runes, gear, and enchants. This is a big reason on why we like to run Rune of the Fallen Crusader as well. Along with its healing, we do gain that 15% strength, which translates to more armor from Bone Shield. With the synergies out of the way, we're now going to talk about common mistakes when it comes to using Marrowrend and keeping up your Bone Shield stacks. One big mistake I often see is spamming Marrowrend when you're already at max stacks of Bone Shield. Remember that Bone Shield has a maximum amount of 10 stacks, and there's really no reason to use Marrowrend if you're at those 10 stacks. The only time you'd want to use Marrowrend when you're at maximum stacks is if Bone Shield is about to fall off. So if Bone Shield's duration is at 5 seconds or less, then you can use a Marrowrend to refresh it. But if not, then you're just wasting stacks of Bone Shield. Now what do I mean by wasting stacks? If you're at 8 to 10 stacks of Bone Shield and you use a Marrowrend, 1 to 3 of those Bone Shield stacks that you're generating with those Marrowrends will not be added to your Bone Shield stacks. So make sure to wait until you're dropping down to 5 to 7 stacks of Bone Shield until you Marrowrend, and try to avoid using them at 8 to 10 stacks unless the duration of your Bone Shield is about to fall off. One misconception I hear a lot is that having more Bone Shield stacks will give you more benefits. This is only true if you're running the Foul Bulwark talent, as the more stacks you have, the more maximum health you'll have as well. If you're not running this talent, your only priority is keeping your Bone Shield stacks at 5 or above for Ossuary. Without running Foul Bulwark, the benefit of Bone Shield is the same at 5 and 10 stacks. So keep that in mind, don't worry about your stacks dropping below 10, just worry about keeping those stacks at 5 or above. So along with the mistake of overcapping your Bone Shield stacks, comes with overusing Marrowrend. Now Marrowrend should not be something that's spammed. You only want to use Marrowrend when you want those Bone Shield stacks. Looking at the damage from Marrowrend and Heartstrike almost deals the same amount of damage as Marrowrend, and it only costs 1 rune. It also hits one of the target at baseline as well. So whether you're in a single target or multiple target situation, if you're spamming Marrowrends, you'll be wasting a lot of damage when you could be using Heartstrikes. In addition, you'll also be wasting runic power, as Marrowrends that didn't need to happen could have been used on Heartstrikes that generate more runic power. So we talked about overcapping Bone Shield stacks, but another mistake is letting those Bone Shield stacks drop off of you completely. Whether the duration of these stacks just wore off, or if you lost stacks from enemies hitting you, losing all of your stacks of Bone Shield is definitely a big mistake. You always want to have Bone Shield up. Without Bone Shield, you're losing a ton of haste and a lot of armor. If you don't have this buff up, it really makes you very squishy and a lot more susceptible to one-shots. If you don't have a big cooldown to use or a Marrowrend that you can use quickly, you'll likely die without Bone Shield stacks. So while you're trying to avoid overcapping on these Bone Shield stacks, you also want to avoid having these stacks fall off. So with all of that in mind, how can we optimally use Marrowrend and manage our Bone Shield stacks? So for optimal Marrowrend usage, we do want to be using Marrowrend at 5 to 7 stacks of Bone Shield. Again, we don't want to drop below 5 stacks so that Ossuary can be kept active, and we don't want to use it between 8 and 10 stacks so that we're not wasting our Bone Shield stacks. However, if the duration of your Bone Shield is about to fall off, this could be the case if you're off tanking in a raid fight. It is okay to use it at 8 to 10 stacks, below 5-second duration left on your Bone Shield stacks. We want to use as little Marrowrends as possible so that we're using those runes on Heart Strikes, which deal more damage and generate more runic power. We want to make sure we're always starting off a pull with Dancing Rune Weapon in order to use less runes on Marrowrend and start building up our runic power quickly. So every raid boss fight, every Mythic Plus pack that you're able to have Dancing Rune Weapon up, use it right away, get a Marrowrend off, and that'll put you instantly above 5 stacks of Bone Shield. Now this is easier said than done. It can be hard to track your Bone Shield stacks with everything else going on, but if you're able to do so efficiently, it'll definitely improve your gameplay, improve your self-healing, and improve your damage. A great way to track your Bone Shield stacks is with some kind of weak aura. So if we can see when I hit this target dummy here, I have a weak aura that appears just below my character with the duration of the stacks and showing the stack count. There's many different weak auras you can get. This one is probably the simplest, but I find it effective. It always lets me see how many stacks I have of Bone Shield and what the duration of those stacks are. If you like this weak aura, I do have it on my Wago.io profile, which is linked in the description. So in summary of how to use Marrowrend and keep up your Bone Shield stacks optimally, use Marrowrend when you're between 5 to 7 stacks of Bone Shield. Don't drop below 5 stacks, and don't use Marrowrend between 8 and 10 stacks of Bone Shield unless the duration of your Bone Shield is below 5 seconds. Use Dancing Rune Weapon on pull, so you gain those 3 extra Bone Shield stacks right away, and that puts you above 5 instantly. If you're Necrolord, use Abomination Limb just before you use Dancing Rune Weapon to get you at 9 stacks really quickly. In a Mythic Plus scenario, you want to keep as many Bone Shield stacks going into the next pull as possible. For example, if you're about to finish up one pack, you want to prioritize getting high stacks of Bone Shield before going into the next pack. Going into a pack with Bone Shield stacks will really decrease the initial damage that you take. It also makes it so you don't have to build up those Bone Shield stacks when you go into a pack, and you can use runes on Heartstrike more freely. Setting up for that next pack in Mythic Plus is definitely important. With all that said, let's get into some gameplay to see how it works in a Mythic Plus dungeon. So now we're going to look at some footage from a 17 Sanguine Depths, and I really want you to look at the Bone Shield stacks just below my character here. Just keep an eye on how I manage those. So we're finishing off this one pull. We are at 7 stacks. Going into the next pull, we do have Dancing Rune Weapon active, and we do have a good amount of runic power. So this is really ideal to go into a next pull. You want high amounts of runic power and high stacks of Bone Shield. This won't always be possible, as you might have to just survive through the previous pull. But if you can do this, if you're not at any danger of dying, definitely try to get this set up. So as we go in, we're going to pop Dancing Rune Weapon right off the bat here. As you can see, we're not using our Marrowrend yet, and we used it when we got to 6 stacks of Bone Shield. We waited until we dropped to 6 stacks and pretty low duration until we used that Marrowrend. Now keep an eye on those stacks. I'm going to keep dropping, but I'm not going to use Marrowrend until I need to use it. As we can see, we're at 8 stacks now. The duration is continuing to drop here. It does seem a bit scary at first as you are dropping lower on stacks, but just remember, having lower stacks, as long as you're above 5 stacks, it's fine. It's not going to give you any benefit if you're at higher stacks, as long as you're not running Foul Bulwark. So we're at 6 stacks here, still not Marrowrending, as I want to gain runic power by using Heart Strikes. Duration is running low. We're at 5 stacks now. We're going to use a Marrowrend right there. That's when we dropped at 5 stacks and the duration was getting low. We really needed that Marrowrend to get those Bone Shield stacks up, but before that, we could use runes on Heart Strikes to generate that runic power there. From here, we're just going to continue using our Marrowrends when we need to, keeping above that 5 stacks, and using the rest of our runes on Heart Strikes. There was another Marrowrend there when we dropped to 5 stacks again. So it's really about using Marrowrend when you need it and optimally using a lot of those runes on Heartstrike. And as you can see after this pull, we're in a great situation again. We're at 7 stacks of Bone Shield and almost maximum runic power, which is awesome. Ideally, this is what you want to shoot for going into the next pack with in Mythic Plus, especially if you have trouble with the initial pull and getting set up. It really helps a lot. So that wraps up everything to do with Marrowrend usage and keeping up your Bone Shield stacks. I hope this gave you an insight on how you can better manage these abilities and improve your Blood Death Knight gameplay. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. As always, I really appreciate all the support. Definitely let me know if there's a video you'd like to see soon, and I'll catch you on the next one.